Have you ever wondered why we're so often drawn to the very people who push us away? It's a really painful cycle, and it turns out the reason goes way deeper than just romance. So let's get into it.
You know that feeling, right? That almost magnetic pull towards someone who's distant or inconsistent or just unavailable. It's confusing, it can be heartbreaking. But what if it isn't just a string of bad luck? What if there's something else going on?
And this quote right here, it reframes the whole thing perfectly. This isn't about the so-called thrill of the chase. No. It's a deep-seated psychological pattern, one that keeps repeating itself a lot of the time without us even realizing it. To really understand this pattern, we have to start by looking at the other side of the coin, the emotionally unavailable partner. What does that even mean? Okay, first things first, emotional unavailability isn't about someone being a bad person. Not at all. It's just a pattern of behavior. It means someone really struggles with being vulnerable, with building those deep, intimate connections that a truly fulfilling relationship needs. Think of it like this image, a heart with a lock on it. The person can be right there with you physically, but emotionally, they're closed off. Their inner world is kind of off limits, which is, not only frustrating, but for some of us, strangely alluring. So where does that allure, that attraction, even come from? Well, decades of research all point in one direction: our past. We've got to talk about our very first relationships and the love blueprint they created for us. And this brings us to something called attachment theory. The core idea is actually pretty simple. The way we connected with our parents or caregivers when we were just infants becomes the template, the blueprint for how we expect love to feel and work for the rest of our lives. These templates are called internal working models. You can kind of think of them as the subconscious operating system for your love life. They're just running in the background, shaping your expectations about yourself, about other people, and they were programmed a long, long time ago. So this operating system leads to these really distinct patterns in how we relate to people as adults. Psychologists have identified 4 main attachment styles, and just figuring out which one resonates with you, that can be a huge step forward. This grid breaks it all down beautifully. See, the 4 styles are basically determined by 2 core beliefs: your general view of yourself, is it positive or negative, and your general view of others. Where you land on this map can tell you a surprising amount about how you do relationships. So first up, we have the secure style. These are folks who learned early on that relationships are generally safe, usually because their caregivers were pretty consistent and responsive. They tend to have a positive view of themselves and other people, and they can balance getting close and having their own space pretty easily. Then we have the anxious, preoccupied style. Now, these are people who really crave deep intimacy, but they have this nagging fear that their partners don't want to get as close as they do. They might doubt their own worth and find themselves preoccupied with the relationship, always looking for reassurance. Sound familiar? This is often the person who ends up chasing. And who are they often chasing? Someone with the dismissive-avoidant style. For these individuals, independence is king. They value it above all else. So they tend to keep people at a distance to avoid feeling smothered or tied down. This is your classic emotionally unavailable partner. And finally, there's the fearful-avoidant style. You can think of it as a mix of the last two. These folks want connection. They really do. But they're also terrified of it. They have this internal push-pull where they both desire and fear intimacy at the same time. Okay, so we've got these different styles. Now let's tie it all back to that big question from the start. Why does an anxious person so often fall for an avoidant one? Why can this painful dynamic feel so much like love? This right here is the aha moment. Your brain isn't wired to seek happiness, it's wired to seek what's familiar. So if your childhood blueprint for love was that feeling of longing for a parent who is inconsistent or distant, then an adult partner who recreates that same feeling will feel like home. Your brain literally confuses that old, familiar anxiety with a spark of attraction. And you can see how the cycle just plays out step by step. Our childhood forms the blueprint. That blueprint creates our internal definition of love. Then, as adults, we unconsciously scan for that familiar feeling. And when we find someone who triggers it, boom, the childhood pattern gets repeated, often with us hoping that this time we'll finally get a different ending. I mean, just look at this contrast. It's so stark. For a securely attached brain, the feeling of love is associated with safety, with consistency, with calm. But for an insecure brain, especially an anxious one, love can get all tangled up with the emotional roller coaster of the chase, with constant longing, and with that background hum of anxiety. It's two totally different emotional languages. Now, I know this might all sound a bit bleak, like you're stuck in a pattern you didn't even choose. But that is not the end of the story, not by a long shot. So what can you actually do about it? Let's talk about rewriting your internal script. Honestly, awareness is everything. Just by understanding your attachment style, by seeing the pattern for what it is, you start to break its hold on you. It's like you're moving it from this unconscious compulsion into the conscious world, where you can actually start to make different choices. Let's end on this powerful thought from Carl Jung. Your past may have written the first draft of your love story, but it does not get to write the ending. The power to choose a different kind of love, one that's based on safety and security, not that familiar old pain, that's a choice you can start making today. The only question is, what will you choose to become?